Since Traore came to power, all the decisions he has taken have been widely accepted by the citizens of Burkina Faso. French media may say otherwise, but the citizens of Burkina Faso were glad when Traore ended diplomatic relations with France and kicked out French troops. Burkinabe citizens were also excited when Traore formed the alliance of the Sahel bloc with Mali and Niger. However, recently Traore made a decision that has shocked the citizens of Burkina Faso. He granted amnesty to soldiers involved in a coup plot that occurred in 2025. This decision has not been widely accepted by all. But why is this decision controversial? And why did Traore make this move? Let's find out. Burkina Faso was once on the path to greatness until Blaise Compaore came into the scene. We all know the story. Thomas Sankara ruled Burkina Faso for 4 years until he was assassinated by France with the help of Blaise Compaore. After Sankara's death, Blaise Compaore became president of Burkina Faso in 1987, and immediately he reversed all the policies that Sankara had implemented, claiming that his policy was a rectification of the Burkinabé revolution. Unlike Sankara, Blaise went on to become a strong ally of France and the US. Recent reports even suggest that Blaise was part of those African leaders who funded Paris elections. Compaoré went on to rule Burkina Faso for 27 years, winning every election using unfair practices. Under Compaoré's leadership, Burkina Faso became the poorest of the poor countries in Africa. Poverty, unemployment, bad infrastructures, and lack of basic social amenities such as good drinking water became the norm. The people were angry and frustrated. There was tension everywhere as the standard of living was very high. Throughout Compaoré's time as president, he didn't do anything despite all his promises. Yet, Compaoré was determined to rule for a 5th term. As a result, he amended the constitution on October 30th, 2014. As you can imagine, the people were enraged. So hundreds of thousands of Burkinabés took to the streets to protest the decision. They smashed the windows of the National House of Assembly building and set fire to the office of its president. The protest was tough. As a result, Compaoré was forced to resign and abandon the luxurious trappings of the presidential palace and flee for safety as his regime collapsed. He fled to Ivory Coast in a helicopter provided by the French government. After he ran away, a transitional government was installed, and a year later the country was set to hold elections. However, a group of soldiers loyal to Blaise Compaoré organized a coup to take over the country and return power to Blaise Compaoré. This occurred in September 2015. The coup was carried out by members of the Presidential Guard RSP, an elite unit of around 1,300 soldiers loyal to Compaoré. Compaoré set up this unit to ensure his own protection in the wake of the 1987 killing of his predecessor and close ally, Thomas Sankara, during a coup which led to Compaoré taking over. The RSP was a well-trained and well-equipped group of soldiers who have often acted independently from the country's army, which is larger but less well-armed. However, the coup attempt was short-lived, all thanks to the actions of the Burkinabé people. Immediately after the coup was announced, the citizens of Burkina Faso took to the streets, demanding a return to democracy. They were not about to let history repeat itself. To make matters worse for the coup plotters, the main Burkinabé army was not in support of the coup. So, as a result, the coup was crushed and the transitional civilian government was reinstated. The RSP was also dismantled. Before we proceed, here is a reminder to like this video, drop a comment, and subscribe to our channel so that you can get more videos like this. In 2019, those responsible for the coup were sentenced to prison. Specifically, General Gilbert Diendéré was handed a 20-year prison term on charges of murder and harming state security. General Djibril Basolé was also accused of treason and was given a 10-year prison sentence. Diendéré and Basolé were the leading figures in a 19-month trial of 84 people accused of the attempted overthrow of Burkina's transitional government. 8 others, including the wife of General Gilbert, were also tried and sentenced to prison. However, under the leadership of President Traore, the military authorities in Burkina Faso have decided to pass a law granting amnesty to these coup plotters. According to the authorities, the law grants amnesty only to events that took place on 15 and 16 September 2015, when members of ex-President Blaise Compaoré's elite presidential security regiment tried to end the transitional government less than a month before democratic elections. Those seeking what the law calls administrative grace must submit a request to the head of state, Captain Ibrahim Traore. The authorities also added that amnesty decisions will depend on an assessment of the threat the applicant poses to public institutions and to their commitment to the fight against terrorism. When presenting the legislation, Justice Minister Edaso Rodriguez Bayala said that applicants will have to admit to facts, behave well, and be willing to be operationally deployed in the fight against terrorism. Bayala noted that anyone granted amnesty will no longer face legal prosecution, convictions will be overturned, and the offenses will not be mentioned in the person's record. So, in essence, the Burkinabe government is ready to grant amnesty to these coup plotters, provided that they are ready to fight against terrorism. These coup plotters will be at the forefront of the fight against insecurity in the country. So, the government is not just forgiving them, but giving them a chance to be accountable for their actions. However, this law has received mixed reactions. There are some who view the law as a step towards national reconciliation, and there are others who question the motives and potential consequences. However, in our opinion, this is a strategic move by President Traore. President Traore came into power through a coup, and he has also been the subject of coup attempts to overthrow him. So, he understands both sides, and it could actually be a matter of national reconciliation. But beyond this, by granting amnesty to coup plotters, it can serve as a deterrent to those who still wish to remove Traore from power. Some people are scared that granting amnesty to former coup plotters could encourage more coup attempts on Traore. Well, this may be true, but if you think about it critically, Traore's decision is actually strategic. According to political scientist Geoffroy Julien Kouao, the experience of the pardoned coup plotters could be an asset in the country's fight against militant groups linked to Islamic State. Recall that the law would only grant amnesty to those who will be willing to join the fight against insecurity. So those former coup plotters could have valuable military and diplomatic expertise that could be useful to the current government in their fight against terrorism. Personalities like General Gilbert Diendéré and Djibril Bassolé have great military and diplomatic experience that Ibrahim Traore wants to exploit. General Diendéré was a prominent figure in the Burkinabe military, serving as the chief of staff of the armed forces. Bassolé, on the other hand, was a former minister of foreign affairs. So, everyone might not be cool with the decision, but Traore has been making good decisions so far. This one might just be another good one. The fact is that President Traore has been doing a fantastic job since he came to power. You see, it was after Compaoré fled the country in 2014 that Burkina Faso began to suffer terrorist attacks by armed groups. By 2018, the attacks had intensified so much that a state of emergency was declared in several provinces at the end of the year. By this time, the description of Burkina Faso in the media had expanded to not just being one of the poorest countries in the Sahel region, but one that has insecurity problems. From 2019, the terrorist attacks became a daily affair. The only thing the government could do was constantly change the head of the armed forces or the defense chief. The killings and the inability of the government to do anything about it sparked protests and demonstrations across the country. So, in addition to dealing with insurgency, the government had to also deal with the growing civil unrest. By this time, the narrative about Burkina Faso had changed from a country that was once stable to one plagued with political and civil instability. By January 2022, the people of Burkina Faso were tired of the government, and the military was also tired. So it came as no surprise that in January 2022, President Compaoré was ousted from power by Paul-Henri Sandaogo Damiba, a lieutenant colonel in the Burkinabe military. It also came as no surprise that the people of Burkina Faso were excited at the military takeover of the country. While the international community condemned the coup, thousands of Burkinabés took to the streets to express their support for the military government. They saw the coup as a sign that things were going to change. After Damiba was appointed as the interim president, he pledged to improve security and eventually restore civilian rule. The people were hopeful, but unfortunately, Damiba's regime failed to defeat the jihadists. Instead, the killings increased, the jihadists expanded their operations, and by September 2022, they controlled about 40% of Burkina Faso. This led to tensions in the military, with some believing that the reason why the jihadists were able to expand was because Damiba did not focus on the insurgency problem. And so, on September 30th, 2022, Damiba was ousted from power by a formidable force, Ibrahim Traore with other junior officers. Unlike all the other leaders who had ruled Burkina Faso since the death of Thomas Sankara, Ibrahim Traore with his actions and speech proved that he is of a different breed. His actions and personality have made people compare him to Burkina Faso's hero, Thomas Sankara. Shockingly, both of them have a lot in common. At age 34, Traore became the youngest president in the world after he was appointed as interim president of Burkina Faso, following the overthrow of Damiba's government. Unlike his predecessors, his rise to power has altered the course of Burkina Faso and set the country on a different path, a path to greatness. Observing his words, personality, and actions, people can't help but conclude that he is Thomas Sankara come to life. One of his early statements after he came into power was, "I know that I am younger than most of you here. We did not want what happened, but we did not have a choice." Traore appeared to have faded to the background until July 2023, when he accompanied 16 other African heads of state to St. Petersburg in Russia for a meeting with President Vladimir Putin, who had organized the Russia-Africa Summit. It was during this two-day summit that Burkina Faso was catapulted into the spotlight as a country that has a formidable leader. And so the narrative about Burkina Faso changed. Yes, the country is still portrayed as poor and unstable due to the insecurity challenge, but the big difference is there is hope that Burkina Faso is going to get better because of Ibrahim Traore. In his speech at the Russia-African Summit, Traore first highlighted the role of Africa and the Soviet Union in the fight against Nazism in Germany and fascism in Italy during World War II. He bemoaned how historical narratives frequently marginalize these nations' crucial contributions, producing a false vision of history that ignores Africa's pivotal role. In an obvious call for a paradigm shift among African leadership, Traore urged fellow African leaders to resist manipulation by imperialist forces. In his words, "We African heads of state have to stop behaving like puppets who dance every time the imperialists pull the strings." By the end of 2022, he continued, "My administration and I made calls for volunteers, leading to nearly 100,000 additional civilian forces enlisting. Several hundred of these courageous individuals have already sacrificed their lives to safeguard those of their fellow countrymen. What I cannot comprehend," Traore said, "is why other African leaders who offer no assistance stoop so low as to label these brave men and women militias. Elsewhere, they would have been hailed as patriots." Traore also emphasized the essential need of African nations' food self-sufficiency. He praised Russian President Vladimir Putin's promise that free food will be sent to 6 African nations following the collapse of the Black Sea Accord, while also portraying it as a wake-up call for African leaders. "At the next forum, we must not come here without having ensured food self-sufficiency for our peoples," he went on to say. In closing his speech, Traore reiterated the powerful lines from Thomas Sankara's 1984 UN address. "The slave who is unable to assume his revolt does not deserve to be pitied," along with Sankara's distinctive finishing phrase, "Fatherland or death, we shall triumph." These words sounded like a battle cry, quickly spreading over social media channels and touching the hearts and spirits of African youths. This magnificent speech certainly gave a glimpse of the kind of leader Traore is, and since then, all his other addresses at summits and interviews have made him admirable all over Africa. But it's not just his words and statements, it's also his actions. Since he came to power, he has done more than his predecessors to fix the security problem as well as the development of Burkina Faso. Quite right, the jihadist crisis is still a big issue in the country 1 year after Traore came to power. But within this 1 year, he has focused efforts on a strong security response to these attacks by groups linked to the Islamic State. From massive recruitment of volunteers for the defense of the homeland, general mobilization, purchase of drones and helicopters, equipping the military, neutralization of jihadists, and trips by President Traore to the field to motivate troops. He has also signed new defense agreements with Russia, Iran, and Venezuela, all in a bid to deal with the security problem. A true anti-neo-colonialist and anti-imperialist, Traore ended the old defense agreement with the former colonial master of Burkina Faso, France, which gave France the right to interfere in the Burkina Faso military. But that's not all. He also demanded that all the French troops in Burkina Faso leave the country because despite the fact that they have been in the country since 2017 to solve the jihadist crisis, the situation in Burkina Faso remained the same. So according to Traore, Burkina Faso no longer needs France and it wants to defend itself. France had no choice but to leave. In terms of development, the government of Traore has engaged in several developmental projects in the country, including the modernization of roads, setting up a community entrepreneurship fund that would aid in the industrialization of the country, water, sanitation, and agricultural projects, as well as setting up a nuclear power plant, a deal recently signed with Russia. There is no doubt that with Traore in power, Burkina Faso is on a path to greatness. We only hope that he is not assassinated or removed from power like other African revolutionary leaders who were removed from power before they could achieve all that they planned to do. What are your thoughts? Let us know in the comments section below. Don't forget to like this video, drop a comment, and share.